This is ShadowQuant, Crypto Edition, brought to you by AresLabs.ai. Before we begin, please note, what you are about to hear is an AI agent panel. All analysis, voices, and production are generated by artificial intelligence. Nothing you hear constitutes financial advice. Always do your own research. Today is Sunday, May 31, 2026, and this is the After Hours session. Now, let's get into it. The market is in a tight spot this week. Bitcoin is stuck in a 73K, 74K range, but the VIX is still holding above 15. What happens when the Fed meets next week, and why is Solana so volatile? Let's break it down. We're starting the week with Bitcoin at $73,877, still trading in a narrow range. The Fear and Greed Index is at 14, extreme fear, but the market is showing signs of broad strength with 1,327 new highs versus 251 new lows. The big question is whether this fear is just a temporary pause or the start of a longer decline. We'll see if the Fed's upcoming statement on June 14 changes the narrative. For now, the key levels to watch are 73,000 for support and 74,500 for resistance. Also, keep an eye on the Bitcoin futures demand. It's at 2024 lows, which could signal a lack of institutional interest. The macro backdrop is mixed. The Fed is on hold, but the GDP now forecast is still at 4.26%, which is strong. However, the consumer sentiment is at the zero. Second percentile, extreme pessimism. That's a contradiction. If the market continues to trade in fear, the Fed might have to step in with more dovish signals. But if the economy holds, we could see a shift toward risk-on. I'm watching the June 14 FOMC meeting closely. If the Fed hints at rate cuts, that could be a big catalyst.
Looking at the charts, Bitcoin is in a tight consolidation range. The 73,000 level is a key support, and a break below that could send it to 71,000. On the upside, 74,500 is the next resistance. The RSI is at 42, not oversold, but not overbought either. The volume is low, which means we could see a big move either way. If Bitcoin breaks above 74,500, that could trigger a rally to 76,000, but if it fails, we might see a pullback to 72,000.
On-chain data is mixed. The Bitcoin network hash rate is steady, but the transaction volume is down. That's a sign of reduced activity. Solana is the wild card here. Its funding rate is at 100th percentile, which is extremely high. That means a lot of longs are leveraged, and a drop in price could trigger a lot of liquidations. Also, the decentralized finance TVL is up 5% this week. But that's not enough to signal a major shift in institutional interest. I'm watching the stablecoin flows. If they continue to move into dollar, that could be a sign of risk-off behavior.
The biggest risk is the overheated long positions in Bitcoin and Solana. The funding rates are at extreme levels, which means the market is highly leveraged. If there's a short-term correction, that could trigger a cascade of liquidations. Also, the COT data shows that commercial positions are at 100th percentile in all major futures. That's extremely long. If the market turns, that could be a big headwind. I'm also worried about the insider selling. It's at zero, which is a bearish signal.
The big picture is that the market is in a waiting game. The Fed is on hold, but the economy is still strong. The question is whether that strength can translate into a risk-on move. The Bitcoin futures demand is low, which is a red flag. But the decentralized finance TVL is up and the on-chain activity is stable. If the Fed stays dovish, we could see a rally. But if the economy slows, we could see a drop. The key is to watch the Fed's statements and the macroeconomic data. This week could be the turning point.
The macro environment is still mixed, but the Fed is likely to stay cautious. If the GDP now forecast stays strong, we could see a shift in sentiment. My call: Bitcoin bearish, target 72,500 by Friday.
The technical setup is neutral. Bitcoin is in a tight range and the RSI is in the middle. A break above 74,500 could trigger a rally, but if it fails, we could see a drop to 72,000. My call: Bitcoin neutral, target 73,500 by Friday.
The on-chain data is mixed, but the Solana funding rate is at an extreme level. That means a short-term correction could be coming. My call, Solana bearish, target 78 by Friday.
The biggest risk is the over-leveraged long positions in Bitcoin and Solana. If the market turns, that could trigger a lot of liquidations. My call, Bitcoin bearish, target 72,000 by Friday.
The big picture is still mixed, but the Fed is likely to stay cautious. If the economy holds, we could see a rally, but if the Fed shifts, we could see a drop. My call, Bitcoin neutral, target 73,500 by Friday.
If you're finding value in this analysis, support the project at Patreon. com/ShadowQuant. Patrons get early access to every episode, weekly AI analyst scorecards, and daily intelligence briefs. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, hit that follow button and leave a rating. It helps more traders discover the show. We appreciate you. This content is generated by artificial intelligence and is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice. Crypto markets are highly volatile. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. That wraps up this edition of ShadowQuant Crypto Edition. Stay tuned for the Tokyo session, where we will see how these calls play out. Until then, trade safe.